bizarre.
Yeah, we're gonna start recording right away.
I'm just
All the
eating
good
small.
bits are at the beginning.
Vinka, we can't see you.
Oh,
Vinka.
Vinka.
Vinka, I know she wrote to me yesterday. She didn't know what time,
She
but
wrote to
she's there.
me. She wrote to me too. And I
She's
have no
probably out at,
phone, which is
she's
like it's so
probably out at
exciting.
Mushroom Valley. She lives at Mushroom Valley, you know.
No, I didn't know that, but I can see that.
I've only got one left. You want it? Yeah. Well, there she is.
Hey,
Vinka's
Kristen.
got horses
Hey,
that lives out
Eric,
at
Seema,
Mushroom
Karen,
Valley, where they have this
Dana,
big
Doris.
festival every year. Mushroom Fest. Everybody takes psychedelic drugs and
Oh,
dances
wow.
around naked.
Oh, not delicious mushrooms like for a bouillabaisse?
It's
Is
like
that
a
what you're
whole
talking about?
naked thing. I've never been, and I don't think I'll ever go. But see what I mean?
It's
Everybody
upside
likes
down.
it's
It's
upside
upside down.
down, Miss Jane.
That's about right.
It's still upside
Still
down.
upside down. There you
Here
go.
we go.
Sweet.
I've got to finish chewing this thing. Is it 10 o'clock yet? It is. Cool. So, I shouldn't have put the last one in my mouth.
Hmm. Hmm.
Have you guys all got a book of this? Helen's
Helen's
Notes.
notes.
Incredible stuff. I haven't really read much of it, but every time I read even a little bit, I got to put it down and digest it, and it sits in my head going. Brrr. Note to self: these things are really chewy.
Toffee.
I know, toffee. Simo, you got your books? You're reading them?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I am.
Good. Has everybody in this Zoom meeting got a book?
Oh, I'm sending Eric his.
Eric doesn't
Everything's
have one.
going. I'm
He probably
sending it to
doesn't need
him.
one.
He doesn't need one.
I've just
I'm
been
sending
using
him.
the ACIM.org,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
but
sending
there's
him one
something
though.
about paper. Yes.
There's something like when you can just like flip through the pages and just like the smell of paper and all of that, you know, like there's a whole organic thing that goes along with it, I think. It's ancient, an ancient memory. It goes back to Gutenberg days. So, all right, well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, I guess I wanted to talk about it. It's been on my mind a little bit with doing these videos and stuff. Oh, Andre. Hey, Andre.
1 in the morning.
It's 1 in the morning over
I
there
think
where
so.
Andre is.
He's in Nigeria. What's up, brother?
You're in Africa?
Hey. Yeah, I'm in Africa.
1 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning.
1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're king.
What's up?
Jesus loves you.
Mhm.
Well, it's like time, you know, time waits for no man. The kingdom of heaven waits for no man. You got to get it where you can get it, I guess. So
Yeah.
I was up at 1 in the morning actually for my this morning. I had the worst night's sleep last night. It felt like beetles were under my skin everywhere, just like one of those really, you know, when you can't, what's that thing they call restless legs or whatever, and you have these just my whole body was like that. I was awake like 3 or 4 times, but when you go through transformation, all of that stuff happens. All of that stuff happens. You get kind of any weird thing, and the first temptation is to want to call the doctor because you think there's something wrong with you. And it's like, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with me. It doesn't matter what's going on. I'm living in the resurrection, right? I'm living in the resurrection. The whole continuum is raising up. Whether I'm consciously participating or not, I'm going to feel the kind of angst of it somehow, But at least if I've got some mind training, at least if I've got a little bit of self-awareness, I can learn to equate that with what's actually happening as the resurrection, rather than reaching for a bottle of pills or calling the doctor or whatever. And I'm not saying don't call the doctor. I mean, if it's bad and you don't have enough faith to go through whatever, I mean, call the doctor. But yes, 1 a.m. Usually I'm up at 2, like 2 to 2:30. I get woken up and it's like, well, now what, Jesus? You think I'd be more grateful, but, you know, he wakes me up at all these weird hours. And if it's not him, it's usually some other brother somewhere in the world. If I forget to turn my phone off, I'll get a little ding, you know, and that wakes me up. And it's like somebody in like Africa or somewhere. Hey, I'm awake. What are you doing? And it's like, it's funny. So you always got to be in service. Okay, I'm being recorded. Just got that pop up. So I wanted to just really, because of the videos I've been making, and a lot of the questions I get reflect the same kind of mindset, right? That you can have a whole bunch of different questions, but any question is always ego. Okay, out of those, you have to kind of work it out for yourself. Well, what is a helpful question? Because if you look at the idea of denial, if you look at the idea of, oh, hang on, just got a delivery. Hold that thought. All right, you there, Nick? All right. I just got coffee delivered, so that was kind of nice. So it's a rainy day. It's pouring with rain out there. It's cold. I'm having comfort food, coffee and toffees. So I'm not adjusting to my disappointment of this terrible day at all. So what happens is when you're coming from an experience of denial, right? So you discover A Course in Miracles or some other sort of spiritual idea, and it begins to set you off on a new direction. But because you're coming from an old direction, you're coming from the thing that you no longer really want, or that you've outgrown, might be a better way of looking at it, right? You've outgrown judgment, you've outgrown better and worse, you've outgrown mine and yours, or at least you're in the process of that, right? And things begin to show up and you see, oh, I'm still clinging onto these old ideas of mine and yours, or better and worse, and the duality of life. But the whole transition of the spiritual process is to get you free from all of that as quickly as possible, right? Because fundamentally, the world is not your home. You don't know why you're here, what the hell it's all about. You don't really know anything, right? Ever since you've been born here, you've been making it up as you go along, the same way as all the generations before you. People educate you in the way they were educated, and you don't even stop to question it until finally you get to some point and you go, what is my head full of all this stuff? Facts, you know, trivia about the world. That's not thinking, right? It's not thinking. It's not conscious, actionable thought. It's just facts. I mean, it might help you if you go on a game show, but it's other than that, it's just we use it to babble on and fill up the days. You know, you have a conversation with somebody and you just talk about whatever comes up, who's doing what happened yesterday or tomorrow, because basically the mind is terrified. I am terrified to sit in the silence, to actually be still and undergo a shift in consciousness, which is what will happen if you don't fill in the gap. All right. And this is why I'm getting to these questions, when you pick up on some new ideas and they feel good to you and you're like, I'm going to look at this idea, I'm going to see if this has a value to me. And you can do that with very in-depth kind of like orchestrated look at it, or you can just sort of give it a cursory glance and, I'll tuck that away for later. It might come in handy, whatever. But you question it, right? You cannot not pick up a new concept or a new idea without questioning it, because it's only been presented to the ego mind. Christ mind needs nothing. Buddha mind needs nothing. Krishna mind needs nothing. It's all perfect, right? There's nothing to question. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to heal. You're whole and perfect as God created you, and you really have nothing to say about it. But in the interests of severing the ties to the temporal realm, severing the ties to the world where we think that we're obliged to fulfill a certain role here, right, or a certain obligation to our own identity here, there has to be this kind of undoing process or setting free process or healing process, whatever you want to call it. Right? And that process in our circumstance revolves around forgiveness, revolves around letting go, release, all of that. But fundamentally, every concept, every idea that comes to you through A Course in Miracles or any other sort of spiritual avenue, you're going to question it. You're going to be like, oh, let me look at that. How does this fit in with where I'm at, with what I believe, everything else? And you'll find that there'll be ones that you pick up and you'll go, I love this idea, and you'll stash it away in consciousness somewhere. And other ones you'll go, oh, that's not really where I'm at, and you'll put it down, or you'll get away from there. But and this is where you have to really take an in-depth look, right? One of the things with asking questions about things is you have to realize you don't know what's helpful, right? You only think you know what's helpful based on the education you've had coming to the spiritual discipline that you've discovered. Right? So one of the lessons in the course is I do not perceive my own best interests. Okay. And what happens in a sense is, especially if you've been on a spiritual journey, let's say, for a long time, you suddenly fall into this trap of thinking you know something. Right. And I'm going to vouch for that, because definitely, absolutely, that's been my experience. Right. Even though at the time I was thinking I knew something, I would have said, oh, no, I'm open-minded. I'm just keeping it all real and, like the whole thing. But in actual fact, that was still just me telling myself something based on my own thinking, right? So the idea of asking a question then, it's like, well, I really have to question why I would want to ask a question. So I pick up A Course in Miracles. It's got Jesus written straight on the cover there in the sparkly edition. And it's like, and in there, it doesn't matter what edition you've got. Jesus is saying, I'm in charge of the atonement. I'm in charge, not you. Right? So when I read that, it's like, okay, maybe I'm coming from a really serious place of doubt and denial. Maybe this is my first encounter with an idea of Jesus and I don't give him much credibility at all. Or maybe I've had a long family history of being indoctrinated through religion to believe in Jesus, and I sort of have a fairly familiar background with Jesus and whatever, right? But there comes a point where in your own mind, you have to realize you don't know, right? You've got to let go. You've got to give up. I don't know. I'm just going to give up, and I'll let Jesus show me, or I'll let the Holy Spirit show me. I'll let God show me. Hey, Arthur.
That's blue ketchup.
So, huh?
That's blue ketchup.
Oh, Arthur is blue ketchup. Oh,
Yeah.
now we know your alias. It's
The
like
one and
Clark Kent.
only.
It's like Clark Kent taking off his glasses. Like
Yeah.
now we know
Yeah,
who you
literally.
are. Oh, that's Batman
That
taking the
day
hood
I'm
off.
Arthur, a night I'm blue ketchup.
You've been completely anonymous up until now. Now we all know you. Blue ketchup.
I just like the name blue ketchup. It wasn't to be anonymous.
It's funny because I have so many people ask me things and write to me on YouTube now, and it's like everybody uses a secret code name, It's like, who is this? Who's this person? I got no idea. Little tiny icon picture. It's like, where's my glasses? It's like, nah, can't see who that is. So you come to a place where you finally have to give up, right? So when I'm reading this book, right, is a perfectly stated version of the universal curriculum. Perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. If you've had, and it's complete. If you've had exposure to the universal curriculum through other faiths or other backgrounds, other disciplines, whatever, it's almost certain that you'll recognize all of those things in here, but there will be more in this because this is comprehensively manufactured, let's say, or comprehensively put out specifically to be a full embodiment of the universal curriculum. Whereas if you're reading the Gitas or the Old Testament, the Bible and whatever, and you've got to bear in mind, there's a lot more stories that could go into the Old Testament that are stashed away in the Vatican, right? Stolen through the Crusades. But when you're reading those books, what you're reading is a compilation of various stories woven together over time from lots of different people's impressions, lots of different people's experiences and their divine connections and all sorts of things. They're going to eventually say the same thing, but they're open to a lot of interpretation, right? And you got to remember when Jesus says in the Course, revelation is intensely personal. What's revealed to me in my revelation regarding the nature of life, the universe, and everything is specifically for me to awaken my dumb ass up out of the dream, right? For you, the same thing. We can both agree I've had a revelation. I've had this whole outer thing experience, outer body experience, but they may not line up when we try to compare the particulars of them here, which is why trying to work it out, trying to question it all and make it fit with what I believe or what I think I believe is never going to be useful. It's just like a delaying strategy. Okay. So when Jesus says something in the Course, it's like, well, I don't know what he's saying, right? Well, don't try to work it out with the mind that doesn't know what he's saying. That's pointless. If you don't know what he's saying, simply admit to yourself, oh, I don't know what he's saying. Don't use another reference from Hinduism or Buddhism or any of those things. Just sit in the place where I don't know what he's saying. Allow that to open to an acceptance and a surrender and a vulnerability, and you can be shown, right? But in everything, it's a leap of faith. In everything, it's trust. It's like, well, I need to put all my trust and my faith in Jesus and just say yes to it, even if I don't understand it. Okay? Because my understanding of it, funnily enough, is not really required. Right? My willingness to be led and to be guided is. Okay. And it's through that willingness to be led and to be guided that I will experience what it is I need to experience that will make it understandable to me. All right. It's like if you tell somebody, tell a little child, don't put your hand on the hot plate because it's hot. They don't know what that is. They've got to go through the whole process of putting their hand on the hot plate to know what the hell you're talking about for themselves. They can't work out what the hot plate is in their brain based on your understanding. Right? You can talk about the hot plate together, but until they have their own experience, they're not going to know. Right? Which is why when you have all these questions come up, and you'll have, like Jesus says in the Course, you'll have 1,000 questions and 1,000 more. Right? I've always found it beneficial to realize, hang on a minute, I'm asking questions. Right? Nothing wrong with that. But are these questions that I'm asking based on my thoughts that Jesus has already told me are meaningless? Okay. So I'm automatically always going back to source. I'm always going back to God. So rather than asking questions, I'm simply admitting, I don't know. I don't know what he means by that. I'm just going to be still for a second and allow the Holy Spirit to speak to me. Right? That's what you're being directed to do. Not to work out the answers to every question that pops in your head about anything spiritual that might be or might not be relative to the whole process of your undoing. It's got to be miraculous, right? Course in Miracles, not a course in let me just work this out. Okay, 365 lessons for dummies. That's what it is, really. Dummy number 1 here for service, ready and willing, you know. I've got ink all over my, you see. I've been working hard. It's funny, the dream, isn't it? I'm working, I'm doing a this, I'm doing a that. There's nothing happening. But it's incredibly convincing. You know, the other day I was driving back from the Gold Coast, coming up the mountain, and there was it's very steep. It's one road. It goes up, 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 up like that. And if there's a truck or something slow, like the traffic just backs right up. You're just doing 20 kilometers up this mountain thing. And I'm there, and there's a huge queue. There's a water truck going up, right? And all of a sudden, I'm in the total joy of being in a traffic queue. It's like, wow. Like, you got to remember, it's all virtual. It's all not really happening. It's like when my experience in time and space is over, I'm never going to be stuck in a queue again. I want to really embody this and enjoy this and milk it for everything it is. It's like, like, look, my hands are on the wheel. I actually think I'm driving a car. You know? And we just take it for granted, we just take it for granted until something else comes in that we don't understand. And then we question it to try and fit it in with our limited understanding of where it is we think we are and what we're about in the first place. We try to dumb it down to fit into our comprehension and our understanding rather than to admit to ourselves we don't know what it is and allow our comprehension and understanding to be opened up to life even further. So when you're coming from a headspace of denial, when you're coming from a place where I don't know the meaning of life, I don't know what's going on, I don't know why I'm here, and all of that sort of stuff, just remember, stay in the place where I don't know. Just because you find a Course in Miracles book and just because you find the Bible or the Gitas or whatever, you still don't know. You can read those books 10,000 times over. You don't know anything until you know yourself, higher self, true self, universal self. And that's all there is to know, right? It will save you a lot of time, from trying to work out things you think you don't know that you think you need an answer to, right? It's like Eric. Eric probably only has to open to page 342, read the first 2 lines, and he's done. He's out of here, right? Whereas Noodle probably needs, we have to hit her over the head with this book. I don't know, it's different for everybody. It's totally different for everybody. So, but you can call them traps if you like, or delay. And remember, everything's conscious, everything's deliberate. So you can call it a trap, you can call it a delaying tactic, whatever. The last thing you do, and this is where I always come, when it says in the Bible, you're a liar and the son of a liar and all of that. I always come from that place. Doesn't matter how long I've been doing anything spiritual. That's my line in the sand. That's my backdrop, that's it. There's never a place where all of a sudden I'm not the liar anymore, because look where I find myself. I'm still here. I'm still with one of these body things. Right? Therefore, the idea of I'm the liar and the son of a liar, somewhere that's still in me, right? It's like Jesus says, you'll lay the body aside when your learning is done. So obviously my learning's not done. I'm still lying about something, right? So the next time I find something that disturbs my peace of mind, it's because I'm lying about love. I'm still wanting love on my own terms rather than actually as it's showing up for me. And that's going to be humbling to the ego, and it's going to be all of those sorts of things. But eventually you get over the idea that being humbled is a bad thing or something that's distasteful, and you start to be grateful for it. It's like, wow, thank you. Thank you for pulling the rug from under my arrogant feet again. People in the world don't think that way. It's like, if you've got a worldly mentality, let's say, then you've built a lot of time and effort into maintaining some sort of an identity that seems credible to some sort of identities. To admit that you're a total fool and a failure and a fraud and a dunce and all of those sorts of things is like, who the hell does that in the world? It's like, no, I don't know anything. I just throw my hands up. No, I don't know. Jesus in charge. I'm just going to leave it up to him. That's it. That's all I got. And I'm happy about it. I'm happy about it. There's not a second in the day where I think I know anything other than what it is that I am. You know, I mean, that's not true. I often think throughout the day that I know things. You know, I often find myself buying into the drama of what seems to be presented out there and validating it. But because of mind training, I bring my finger back here and go, oh, hang on a second. I see what I'm doing there. I see that I'm making this all real to me. I'm giving it a value again. Right? It's kind of like a self-correcting thing. It's like a doctor, you know, like a doctor, if you sit in your doctor's practice all day and you're treating sick people, and then you're walking out at the end of the day, you're going home, and you see people walking around, you know, it's like all of a sudden, it's not that there's no sick people. You just don't know that the people that you're seeing now aren't sick, you know. But as soon as somebody walks past you and they're coughing and sneezing, all of a sudden you're going to be thinking they need vitamin C, they need whatever. Like your mind is trained to just pick up on what it needs to pick up on and make the correction internally, right? It's the same with this. You're going to be going out of this Zoom meeting and then you're going to go and have coffee or whatever with somebody. And then the next thing you know, someone's going to say something and it's going to activate you. You're going to be like, oh, hang on a minute. And it brings you right back to your mind training. It brings you right back to that place where all of a sudden you're with Jesus again or with the Holy Spirit again. And you remember that you've actually got a true purpose in that situation, which is to represent that moment of stillness and allow the Holy Spirit to flow through you and do whatever needs to be done. Right? It's not about me suddenly saying to the other person I'm having coffee with, hey, have you heard about this book? Let me read you something from this book. I mean, if that occurs, so be it. But the sole responsibility that I have to this is to keep my finger on my nose and accept atonement for myself. That's it. But I've got someone ringing me, that can wait. But the whole thing in accepting atonement for myself is that I know nothing. Right? I don't perceive my own best interests. My thoughts don't mean anything. That doesn't change. Just because I've finished the workbook and I know some of the stuff he says and I feel like I've got a better grip on things, the status quo is that here I am, Lord, use me. That's it. Make me a vessel. Use me. Don't let me get in the way. I'm my own 2 cents isn't worth anything here. You know? And that's the place where I stay. So even when I'm doing these Zoom meetings, I'm only telling you guys what you already know. But together, because the dream is so powerful, because the illusion of denial is so strong, we come together to be reinforced in what it is that we're giving value to now as an idea of let's not give value to the dream, but rather to reality. It's like all those years I spent sitting with Ted, I had no clue really what I was getting out of all that time sitting with him. I just knew in my heart and in my mind I had to be there. There was just something that told me I have to be with this guy until I know for myself that I don't have to be there anymore. You know, and I sat with him for 6 years. Best 6 years of my life I ever spent. I would not want to do it again. But at the time, it's exactly what I needed. And if you had seen my state of mind and who I was and where I was at with my managing my own affairs in life prior to meeting him, you would understand. You'd be like, dude, you're a mess. And I would have been the only one in the world to tell you that I was okay. Nothing wrong with me. It's everybody else. So Helen's notes, I did have a little piece of paper here, but I don't have it now. I was reading this the other day. Page 18. I was reading this the other day and I'm just going to read it. This is about prayer and So somebody wrote me a question asking about Satan the other day, right? And anyone here, was it anyone in this Zoom? No. Somebody asked me a question about Satan. They were very worried. They were being terrified by their own imagination about it, etc., etc. And having had a satanic experience that I don't really talk about it because it's so far in the past, and it's something that I guess I can't explain it, and I don't really have an answer to it other than salvation. You know, it's like I don't really see the point in talking about it, but I do remember the acute sense of fear and terror that I had around it, and how grateful I was to some probably couple of years later to have found Jesus, right? To found and get baptized and all of that sort of stuff. But the idea that the mind, not Dave, but the mind, if you think of everything's just energy, I'll accord X amount of energy to whatever it is that seems to be in front of me, and I'll get the results of doing that. If I make the dream real, good or bad, one comes with the other, I'm going to get the results of that. If I let God be real and everything else be just an illusion or just a dream or nothing more than the figments of my own imagination, then I can begin to look at it all differently when something shows up that seems to be disturbing me. All right. So probably the experience I had would have been one of my most horrifying, one of my most terrifying, one of my most unexplainable experiences that I've had. All the experiences that I've had, which have been, and keeping it personal, that I've had, which have been in alignment with my spiritual path or my transformation, have always made sense of where it is that I was at with something. They've always been reasonable. They've always been normal and helped me to process and fathom the nature of what it is that I was going through, so that I wasn't concerned about it, right? Even when I heard the Holy Spirit speak to me one day and said, there's nothing to worry about, right? It's like, we can't explain this to you. Just take it from us. There's nothing to worry about. And it's like, okay. And I said that as a mantra for about 100 times. There's nothing to worry about until finally it got in my head. Right? I think it was by about the 60th recitation that it kicked in. But I remember that the one that I had of the devil was different. And because you're talking about an experience of chaos, right? An experience of insanity, an experience of undependability, an experience of deceit, denial, all of that sort of stuff, you can't make sense of it, because that's what that stuff is, right? Insanity is insanity because it's insane. So when I had the dream, I don't know if you guys watched that video that I just recently did, like the day or two ago. Everyone did or didn't? So, right. So, but when I had that dream, and in the dream I saw a little tiny knife, a jeweled knife. I don't know who was holding it, and just the blade just went and cut my finger. And I saw my finger signing my name, I think signing my name in the book, right? And when I woke up in bed, it was either straight away or in the morning, I can't quite remember, but I remember looking at my finger, it was sore, and there was a little cut in the end of my finger. And immediately I remembered my dream, right? And this terror began to consume me that I'd made a deal with the devil, or I'd signed my soul away or something, right? It was crazy. And I couldn't break free from the grip of that terror. I pulled all the sheets off my bed. I was looking for something sharp in my bed. Maybe I just cut my finger, coincidence. I went into the kitchen, pulled out the knife drawer to see if any knives had blood. Maybe I was sleepwalking and I did it myself or whatever. Nothing. I couldn't find anything. And I went into this huge spiral, this huge downward spiral that took me to a place that changed my life, right? Now, you could say, thank God I got to that place quickly. Who knows how long I might have dawdled around in the world, you know. But it was that terror, it was that fear, it was that insanity that drove me to want to do something about my life. Right? And from that point on, I went to every kind of church and mosque and everywhere, talked to everybody I could. right? Even to the point when finally I got to Ted, a decade later probably, and one day I went to see him after session was done. He'd usually give a talk from about 9 o'clock till about 12 or 1 o'clock, and then we'd have lunch, and he'd go home for a couple of hours and come back in the evening. But his house was just down the road. But people would often go and just sit. He had a big veranda out the front there. Go and sit, and like we were kind of respectful because like the poor guy's just been pouring it out, and like everybody's lining up, still wants to talk to him more. But we would just sit out there. I went up there one day, and there was no one sitting on his little veranda, so I just sat there and waited for him to freshen up and whatever. And he saw me out there. He comes out, and I had to talk to him about it because it was the driving thing, or one of the catalysts, one of the main driving things that actually brought me to Jesus, right? And in so doing, brought me to him. And I explained what had happened and the terror that I was in. And even though I'd had all these teachings of Jesus and everything, that terror was still somewhere down underneath my heart. Like it felt like it could surface at any time, and all of my efforts would be in vain if it was still a thing, you know? And Ted didn't really know how to help me with it, right? He said, dude, you've got Jesus. It's like, what can I say? You know, like, what can I give you that's higher than the highest of the high, you know? And like, he sits on the right hand of the Lord. And I knew I had to let go of my fear. I had no choice. I didn't have a worldly consult. I didn't have a worldly explanation. All my questions had nowhere in the world that I could go to get them answered because I was trying to attempt to process a non-temporal experience in the dream state, in the world state, in the celestial state. It doesn't matter. Right? All my questions come to nothing. All I've got is Jesus. And that's it. And there comes a point, you know, and I have people say to me sometimes, why should we believe this book? Right? Why should I believe this? And people tell me they don't even believe what's written in the Bible. You know, it's like, well, man, how hard can it be to convince some people just to even read something if you've already got these preordained beliefs about how it is that things are and the mind is not open, you know? And it's like, all we're ever being encouraged to do is to keep an open mind to everything. It's like Buddha. Buddha said, question everything. Just keep an open mind, right? Don't just take anything verbatim, because then when you lock it in as verbatim, it's going to sit there as trivia and facts in your own consciousness, and you're going to use it to compare the next thing that comes in based on what it is that means to you, and you're going to end up building a whole fabric, a whole library of thought associations in your consciousness that's the very thing you're trying to get rid of. Right? My job is to return my mind to God as it was given to me. Pure. Scrub the inside of the cup. Right? Pure. No judgment. And yet we use judgment to do that. But not judging against ourselves, but judging for our holiness. Judging for the holiness of our brothers. Judging for the holiness of all living things. Right? You can't just say, oh, I'm not going to judge, because all questions come from judgment, right? I can't ask a question unless I judge one thing against the other and wonder what the difference is, you know? So it's like, well, when I finally come to the place where I accept there's no answers here on earth. God is my only answer. Right? There is no answers on earth. I can read 1,000 spiritual books. I can write 1,000 spiritual books. I can develop every kind of attitude, every kind of positive thinking, balance, all this crap that people go on with, you know, in the name of this and that and the other. All of it's got to be undone later. All of it has to be released later. Right? And there's a beautiful section in the course where he says, my recall of things is fading, but come with holy empty hands unto your God. Bring with you nothing that the past has taught you and nothing that you think is valuable. All of that sort of stuff, right? And like holy empty hands. He's talking about a state of mind, right? Come with holy empty hands. There's nothing in the world I want. Everything from the time that I've learned who it is I think I am here to the time that revelation shows me that the truth of myself, right? Everything between the alpha and the omega, forget about it. I don't care how lofty and spiritual it is. I don't care how wonderful it sounds. I don't care how many people bow down at the feet of the person that's teaching it. I don't care any of that crap. It's all got to go, right? Return my mind to God as it was given to me. I'm part of something that is pure and whole and perfect. And if I want to integrate back into that, if I want to reawaken into that state, I have to become perfect myself, right? Become perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Unless you become as a little child, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. Little children are completely innocent of judgment. They're totally spontaneous. They live in the moment. They don't care why not to put their hand on the hot plate, really. They'll do it just because you said don't do it, right? It's not because they're stupid. It's because they're innocent. They're totally innocent. And they're totally in love with their experience. They're totally in love with life until finally they grow up a little bit and judgment creeps in and they start to get the results of their own thinking at a very early age and realize that there's things in this world that hurt. And then they start to build defenses, which manufactures more things that can hurt them. Right? The more I defend myself, the more I'm putting up a wall against the universe. It's like the little boy with his finger in the dike. Just take your finger out. Let the dike collapse. It's going to happen anyway. You know? It's funny. I've been to the Zuiderzee dike, right, in Amsterdam, which is where the story of the little boy with his finger in the dike is. It's bizarre, and they have these long boats. They're like long canal boats, and they've got windows all along. They're full of tourists. And they tell you the story of the little boy. Well, ours did. I don't know that they all do. Of the little boy that put his finger in the dike. I can't remember it now, but there was a leak and he put his finger in there. All these people were trying to come up with incredible ways to stop the dike from flooding and breaking and whatever. This little kid goes up and just sticks his finger, you know. It's like nothing relative to what we're talking about particularly, but I just thought it was a nice story. Simplicity, you know, the simplicity of things. So it's like I trust Jesus. I have no choice. Right? And the place where you realize that you have no choice, that's where you're free. It might sound confronting. It might sound terrifying to have to give total faith and total trust to Jesus, right? To God, because it means letting go of controlling things my own way. And a human being is nothing if not a control freak. So I trust Jesus, or I tell myself I trust Jesus. I'm going to trust you, Lord. I've got no choice. I see that. I'm going to trust you. And then the next thing that happens is you're proven to be a liar, right? That's got to be joyous. Oh, there's me lying again. Thank God. Caught myself out. I'm laughing at myself. I'm the brunt of all my jokes. I say one thing, I give my life and my soul and my heart and my everything to God, but I don't really. Right? And you begin to see and you begin to laugh at yourself for how much of a phony baloney you are. Right? I'm so full of shit, it's ridiculous. It's like every word, right? Every word Jesus says. It's not what you put into your mouth that can hurt you, but every word that comes out of it. Every word's a lie. It's based on the thoughts in my head. Do you think God needs words to communicate? Words are born of language, which was developed to try and make some kind of sense of the world around us. Why are we here? Right? They're all born in ignorance. All of them, even the ones that try to talk about not being ignorant. I'm enlightened. Those are good words. I'm educated. I've got a degree in something. It's all lies. It's all not true. You may as well wipe your ass with your degree or line your coffin with it or whatever. I mean, you know, like it's, if you think you need something to get something to do something, you're not trusting in God. You know? It's like all these phony baloney Course in Miracles teachers that charge money. It's like, what a, you know, they may as well be telemarketers or salesmen for some kind of bloody snake oil. It's like, do I need to get into that really? Am I sustained by the love of God or not? That's the question. Am I sustained by the love of God or not? I like to say I am, but when the bloody rubber hits the road, there's the proof of my pudding, and I'll get to see whether I'm lying or kidding or not, you know. Until then, I'm probably just going to say, yes, I'm sustained by the love of God because it feels good. Yeah, man, I'm sustained by the love of God. Woo, yeah, I'm doing Course of Miracles. Woo, yeah, I got my life to go in order now, you know. And then all of a sudden, boom, something happens. You realize that you're full of it, right? Between the last time you realize you were a liar and that time you realize you were a liar, all of that didn't count for nothing because you were lying the whole time. The lie is ever present, which is why I say always come from the place of being a liar. I don't know nothing, you know. I remember thinking at one time, it was like, man, you couldn't stop me. After my revelation in 1997, for the next, I don't know, well, for at least a year, I was useless. For at least a year, I was useless to anybody because that experience just, I couldn't stop laughing for one. I would break out in all this spontaneous laughter. I didn't know why. I didn't know. I know why now because like I was releasing energy, and that's a simple way to describe it. Sometimes for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time, I couldn't stop laughing. There was nothing funny, but laughter would come out to the point where my ribs would hurt and everything would start to hurt and then be like, oh, I can't stop laughing. And it became like almost a medical issue, right? Like I can't stop sneezing or I can't stop coughing or I can't stop, but it was laughter, right? Tears out of my eyes, everything. I couldn't make sense of people's conversations. I couldn't, like really, I needed to be in the nut house, right? That experience really fried my brain. Well, it didn't fry it, but it I don't even know what it did, but it made me useless, put it that way. I was able to, if you have a conversation with somebody, let's say, and you talk for a minute, you would probably traverse about 10, 12, 13 thoughts, right? To try and formulate what it is that you were going to say within that minute, right? Just concepts and ideas would pop up and you would reference them, whatever. In my own mind, I could string them all together one-on-one and read them like a whole long thing, right? I knew every thought that was going on in my head for like a minute or two from the time way back here to way up there. I can't now. I couldn't tell you what was in my head 5 seconds ago, but I could see all of my thoughts. It was like in my mind, it was like a savant or something, you know, like I had this memory or what's the, that thing they say about memory when you remember everything, you know, anyway, so I think savant is the word or something. You've got some kind of memory. Anyway, I had that kind of memory going on, right? What was that, Tina?
Photographic memory?
Photographic memory. That's it. Yeah. So I had this like photographic memory and my mind was doing backflips. I was capable of knowing things that it's like now I realize it was reading the script. I'm knowing the script. So I would meet people. I would know exactly what they were going to say word for word before we even came together and shook hands or whatever. I would know the first 10 words that would come out of their mouth, right? I would hear their thoughts in my mind. I would hear them formulating thought, and I would hear me like ESP, if you want to call that. But my mind was supercharged on a level that, you know, like it showed me like what kind of reality that I was living in is this kind of dumbed down thing, you know, even with Greg, you know, our beloved brother Greg that does, I had a moment of joining him and he was doing a teaching one day and he's very floral with his teachings. He's very artistic in the way he describes himself, which suits me because I'm kind of artistic. And he was explaining something, I forget what it was now, explaining something that I was struggling with as an idea, as a concept. And all of a sudden I was glued into him. He was talking about what I needed to hear and boom. And in my mind, I went, oh, thank you, brother. You know, like that, just silently. And he looked over at me, and in his mind, he said, "You're welcome." And I heard him in my mind. It's like, it's bizarre, like you can call that ESP or not ESP. What's that? Telepathy. But it's because there is only one mind. But as a human construct where I keep myself limited to this idea of a Dave doing whatever, I'm not tapping into that miraculous level of mind. It's there, I can experience it, right? Which is why Jesus says that the miracle shows you that minds are joined. Minds are joined, right? Or minds are one. Probably he says joined, but... And during those 6 years with Ted, I had many, many, many. But for the first couple of years, I was useless. I was arrogant. It took me a long time to realize at first. So here's a funny thing. At first, I assumed that everybody in that room, like 150 people, whatever was there in that big, massive meditation place, I assumed that everybody had had that experience straight off the bat, because I equated that experience with that place, all those people in that place and everything else. And it's like, wow, these guys are really onto it. Like, what is going on here? And then it took me quite a while to realize that only a very small percentage of them had had that experience, and the rest were there as students, whatever. And then Greta even said it to me. Greta said, I've seen people studying for 20 years trying to have that experience, and you just walk in off the street and boom, you have that experience. And my ego fed on that. My supercharged ego fed on that. And it turned me into a spiritual arsehole. Right? I was holier than thou. I knew something other people didn't know. And it took me a long, long time, a period of years, to transform what the ego had done with that experience in my mind to a point where I could actually be useful to the atonement as a teacher or as a representative of the curriculum. And I mean, to teach this is to demonstrate. So in daily life, I'm talking not about Zoom meetings where we're all students together and that sort of thing. But that's why in the course it says you're learning to be miracle-minded so you can become revelation ready. For me, I had revelation first, and I wasn't ready for it. The inside of my container wasn't made clean. I had all this stuff going on in my head that still was valuing the identity of a Dave. And it was a good identity. It was solid. I'm an off-grid tree-hugging whatever. I'm better than everybody because I'm trying to make a difference in the world. That was what I thought. I didn't realize perhaps that I thought that, but that's kind of like, look at me living in a teepee. Everyone should live in a teepee and narrow their carbon footprint down to zero, like, it's like, oh man, what an asshole. But you get to see it. You get to see it now. Right? It doesn't make any difference. I could have been the CEO of BlackRock or whatever it is today that's trying to change everything to whatever. Same thing, same deal. Right? All identities in the world are just representative of denial, and that's it across the board. There's none more worthy or whatever than others. They're all playing their part perfectly. And the idea of even oh, hang on, I've got to take this. No, I don't. I'll do it later. The idea of having a satanic experience or whatever, right? It doesn't change that. It doesn't make me any less worthy than any of those people that are living in a church and going to church every Sunday. It's exactly the same. Everything is energy. And in the experience that I have, I'm experiencing either down the rabbit hole to the ultimate bottom, or trying to get out of the rabbit hole, like somewhere you find yourself in between the alpha and the omega, and you're like trying to either examine your past or look to your future to find out where it is you fit in and locate yourself in time and space, and to try and decide who you think you are based on everything else around you. Right? Based on all the other examples and all the other representations. Well, I'm a good person because I've never had a satanic experience, or I'm a bad person because I've never had a Jesus experience. Whatever. It's all the same thing. You can't have the alpha without the omega. You can't have yin without yang. And whether you're a yin person or a yang person in your own consciousness as an idea of yourself doesn't make any difference. We're all in this sinking boat together, right? There's nobody who's holier than thou or anything. So it's like we're all the liar, all the fool, all the whatever you want to call it. And that's where I stay. You know, in India, the sadhus, the Shivites, I'm not going to say they as a collective, but they talk about themselves as being lower than the shit that falls out of the ass of a snake. Right? That's low. And I watched that on a TV show, on a documentary. It was brilliant about sadhus. If you can ever find it, it was on SBS here. There was, I forget how many series there were, but I think 6 or 7. And they explored a different element of the faith of the sadhus every episode. And this guy goes, I am lower than the shit that falls out of the ass of a snake. And that was their place where they wanted to be. To them, that was getting somewhere, that was actually honorable. You know, the Sufis call themselves blameworthy. I am blameworthy. I take the blame for the entirety of all the suffering of mankind because it's only going on in my own mind. I don't know someone suffering unless I accord them the meaning of suffering. Right? Therefore, I'm to blame for all things in the world, all suffering. Right? When you understand that the world is of death, okay, everything here is underlined and underscored by death. Forget for a second that Jesus atoned for death in the resurrection, but just look at it as what it is. I'm now experiencing my own participation, my own atonement in a place where everything's underscored by death. Okay. Now there's a very truthful truth, a truthful truth in the idea that once you confront death, you're not afraid to live. You're not afraid of life. It's the subconscious, unrealized and unrecognized belief in death that proliferates through the thought system, through the mind, keeping everything to a limited perspective. Right? It's very subtle. It's intrinsic in all human activity. You get past the idea of death, you confront your death. It's like Jesus says, if you don't die of the flesh, you can't be born of the spirit. Right? You have to die of the death, not die of the flesh, not as a physical dying, perhaps, hopefully not anyway, but as an idea of seeing that it doesn't matter what you do here. Right? It doesn't matter how high up above others you think you are, or how miserable you think you are compared to others, or whatever, the whole alpha omega scale, it all ends the same way. Right? Now, that's easy to say as a concept. That's easy to say, oh yeah, we all die. All bodies end. But to really let that in and to confront the idea of death on your own scale, on your own, in your own association, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the difference between talking and experiencing. Right? And there was a moment I've had several moments of actual death. Sounds funny because there is no death, right? But of physical death. And this is one that I had recently. I'll tell you about it. It was a moment of surrender, right? And that's how it comes around. You get to that point where you realize that it doesn't matter what you do, it all ends in death. You can't take any souvenirs with you. You can't take nothing. And you just surrender to it, right? Once you've surrendered to it, it can't affect you. It doesn't really bother you because you know you've had the power of mind to surrender to it once. If it shows up again, you surrender to it again. Whatever. Isn't that right, Dana? Dana's about ready to transition. So she's like, it's like, whatever. Do I trust Jesus or not? I'm just going to say yes and know that I'm probably a liar. You know, that's my gold ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, the kingdom of heaven. I just say yes to Jesus, knowing that I'm a liar. He'll take care of everything else. I don't know how to take care of everything else. That's my free pass. I want that everlasting gobstopper. And the funny thing is, you know, it's like I wouldn't say specifically that I love Jesus, right? Which might sound a strange thing to say, but it's like Jesus is my brother. It's like in this world, in this place where I seem to have things that are lovable and things that are unlovable, right? Jesus doesn't fit into that scale anywhere. Right? So when I say I love Jesus, I'm just as much of a liar as ever. Right? I just accept Jesus. I just accept atonement. I just accept that I'm all screwed up and I need help. Right? The idea of love in the world is revealed, right? Because the world is a place where truth is hidden, right? It's within, it's hidden within, veiled. A mist went up, it says in the Bible. Love is revealed incrementally here. It's like it can't just be all plonked on your shoulders all at once like it happened to me, because I was lucky to get out of it alive. It screwed with my head so bad I didn't even know it was screwing with my head. It's powerful. Love is like a raw experience of union, of face-to-face with God. It's like putting high-octane fuel in a little 3-cylinder car or something. Like it'd just blow the engine, you know, like you can't do it. You have to be weaned onto it. So in this world, you have these lessons, you have these lessons in the course, you have these interactions within relationships where little by little we learn that letting go of defenses is okay. We learn that being forgiving is actually good. We're forgiving ourselves for our judgments about, you know, what I think is going on out there. It doesn't make me perfect as a across the board sense of self, but it brings me gratitude in that moment, right? And love is the way I walk in gratitude. When I find that gratitude, I've found the love because of my purpose. My purpose is to serve Jesus, whatever, and I'm still asking questions, trying to figure out the relationships and the situations on my own terms. I'm never going to find the gratitude because I've forgotten what my purpose is. My purpose is simply to accept atonement for myself, which means I've got to let go. I've got to let go of how I think it ought to look. Hello? No. I think the wind's blowing at my door. Love is like the wind. Nobody knows where it comes and where it goes. It could be knocking on your door. Right, so I sit there in my purpose. My purpose is to accept atonement for myself through my willingness to forgive, through my willingness to allow the Holy Spirit to guide me, all of that stuff as one action of mind. All of that stuff as one action of mind. Through doing the lessons in the workbook, I'm going to hopefully remember what my action of mind should be in any given moment that I find myself in, which is stepping back and letting the Spirit work through me, letting the Spirit use me to show me where it is that love is in this relationship that seems to be denying love, seems to be disturbing my peace of mind. And it gets really sticky. It gets really ugly. We've got all the isms, like the 7 deadly sins is just the first, you know, the first 7 cabs off the rank: gluttony, sloth, envy, greed, avarice, whatever the other 2 are. But, and those things are really only Socratean kind of perspectives on life. They're not really, I mean, if you want to be a greedy person and eat lots of food, that's fine. Who's to say that's good or bad? Or if you want to be a sloth and do nothing, that's up to you. You know, there's nothing to say that you have to heal from that or don't heal from that. It's a personal perspective. If it upsets your peace of mind about the habits you have with things, then so be it. But it's not up to me to judge, you know. But when it comes down to my own personal, isms, you know, like your jealousy and pettiness and all of these things, sometimes they're often difficult to see, right? Sometimes they're difficult to see because the nature of mind is to project outward. I project it onto everyone and everything else. Those people out in the world, they're crazy, but I'm okay. Those people are all racist, or those people are all bigots, or those people are all whatever it is, you know. But do I ever put my finger on my own nose and go, well, hang on, I wouldn't know what the hell I was looking at unless it was a thought structure in my own mind? How happy do I feel about that? Does that bring me any peace? Does it bring me any happiness? Does it help me come closer to God to maintain that thought structure? No, let it go. It's all temporal. If I'm not a body, then every ism that I have about my body can't be true. If you're not a body, then every ism that I have about your body can't be true. If none of our physical concerns have any truth, why do I value them? Because I'm insane. Because I'm insane. Right? Breathe that in.
Oh.
Simmer.
Thank you.
Hello.
I better go. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Love you guys.
No questions before you go? You good?
No.
Okay.
Thanks.
Love you. So the idea of admitting to my insanity, right? And if you guys are doing this for yourself, it'll be the same point you get to. It's like an alcoholic. I have to be able to admit to my alcoholism before I can heal from it. Okay. My drug dependency. I have to admit I'm a drug addict before otherwise I'm kidding myself. I still haven't reached the primary kind of obligation that I have to myself to begin to recover. You know, I think step number 1 in the Alcoholics Anonymous, admitted I was powerless over my addiction. And is that step number 1 or is that 2? Anyway, it's one of the primary steps. So when I'm reading A Course in Miracles, I'm reading it from the place where I don't want God. Right? I can tell myself I want God. I can lie. Right? But in every place where my peace of mind is disturbed, who's doing that to me? Me or God? Right? If it's not God, it must be me. Therefore, I'm excluding God from the equation, which is what separation is. I'm choosing for separation, not for wholeness. I'm choosing for separation, not for unity. Get out of here, God. I got this one. I can do this. I'm just going to grab this person by the shirt and shake them until they see my way, until they forgive. Don't judge. You've got to keep your finger on your nose. Isn't that right, Vinka? Keep your finger on your nose. I'm responsible. I wouldn't know what anything was unless it was my mind telling me, because I've given it a meaning. I've given this person, this situation, this event, all the meaning it has for me. And I'm suffering because of it. Jesus says in the Course, anytime you think you want something out there in the world, it can and will hurt you. Anything, a grain of sand. Because with that grain of sand comes the beach, the ocean, the boats, the trees, the birds, the sky, all the other people on the beach, everything. Right? And somewhere within that is a framework of death, a framework of everything underscored here by death. All right? Give up the world and follow me. Give up the world and follow me. This world is not your home. You are not the body. You are spirit, not flesh. I don't care how good your dream is. It's still not reality. It still ends the same way. You know? And it's like, man, having that as a perspective in life, it has to be drummed in again and again and again, because the ego is very good. That part of my mind that still maybe cherishes even that grain of sand is very good at telling me how beautiful that grain of sand is. Oh, it's such a beautiful dream, though. I have people tell me that suffering is beautiful. Oh, suffering is beautiful. You know, like it's an experience. We grow from it. It's like you go to the Middle East right now and tell all those people how beautiful suffering is and stand there with them. I bet that perception of how beautiful suffering is doesn't last very long. You know, go to the Ukraine, stand there and tell them how beautiful suffering is. Show them A Course in Miracles and how you can use energy to change the nature of your life while the bombs are dropping all around you. You know, it's like you've got to be about this. It's like what it is that I accept atonement for as my own personal deal with Jesus, right? That changes the nature of everything in the universe. It's like the Mandela effect. No, not the Mandela, the butterfly effect. You know, a butterfly flaps its wings in Tokyo and a tidal wave, whatever, somewhere on the other side of the world. That's a true thing, right? Jesus says in the workbook lessons, it's like every thought I have either contributes to the resurrection or denies it. So my mind training, keeping my mind focused on love, keeping my mind focused on love through forgiveness, I'm upholding a vibrational expression which comes out of me automatically. I'm not even aware of it. I don't have to be aware of it. I could sit on the top of a mountain in bloody Nepal, like with all the other yogis there, and just focus on love through forgiveness, and resonate exactly the same as I am sitting here. Like that, you know. It's not about doing Zoom meetings, telling others about the book, bringing others into the fold. It's not about that. But the most important thing it's about is me keeping my finger on my nose, because the greatest gift I can offer to my world is my own atonement. Right? All these things work hand in hand. They all go together. They all serve the greater good. But if you had the long way around the mulberry bush to come around with that finger and put it back on your nose, or the short way, which way are you going to choose? Once you see that everything here ends in death, once you see that you don't really have a choice, I'm going to walk with Jesus. I'm just going to take his hand. That's it. I might forget. I might let go of his hand from time to time. I might get caught up in some sort of drama that requires more faith than I've got in the moment. But it's going to come back around again to reveal itself to me again and again and again. Oh, hang on a minute. I've got a new way I can deal with this. I've got a new way to look at this. Let me just be still and let the Holy Spirit come through me and show me how to do it. Okay, so I'm learning to become completely dependent on God. Completely, not partially. Not just in my stuff I don't like. Completely. Even in the stuff I think I do like. Why would I like anything in a dream if the dream was underscored by death and everyone and everything shares in the suffering that I perpetuate, you know? It's a tough gig. You know that bit in the Bible where it says the way to hell is wide, or the gates open wide and everyone's going in there, and the way to truth is narrow and steep and you don't find many people on that path? It's like, that's a true thing. I always find that nobody really wants to hear this message, you know, and I've got to keep my finger on my nose with that. I don't really want to hear it until I begin to associate the letting go of my world not with loss. Then I cannot not associate it with regret and lament. Right? If I still think somewhere in my mind that giving up the world is a loss, that I'm losing something rather than gaining the kingdom of heaven, then there's always going to be regret and grievance and judgment. Right? That's why I always come back to here and now. I don't know when I'm going to draw the last breath through this body. Right? I could have a whole heap of plans for the future, my retirement package, my bloody overseas holidays, whatever it is. but I really don't know. You know, I mean, I've had a very recent experience of that personally with my mother. Went up the road for a coffee with Dad and never came back. In the middle of her cup of coffee, just gone. You know, you don't know. You got no idea. So it's like, all right, let me make hay while the sun shines, because I see the situation I'm in. I see what the world is about. Right? You're awake to the game. The game is chaotic. It's random. It just shows up when it shows up, and you don't know what the next thing coming around the corner is. All right, let me hold Jesus' hand, because that's my only safety, my only surety. That's all I got. It always comes back to that. It always comes back to that. There's nothing else. You only have faith. There's nobody that I've ever heard of where the clouds have parted and the big hands come down with a letter of amnesty and, like, you know, you got some sort of guarantee to put in your pocket and show people, oh, I'm okay, I'm good, I got this. You know, it's like, no. I got faith. And that is the greatest gift, because faith is its own reward. The more you practice faith, the more it increases. The more it increases, the closer it brings you to the realization that you're supported by a higher power. And the more you will want to know of the existence of that higher power and your true relationship with it as it. Right? Lest a man lives by faith alone, he shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. I can't say that any better. Faith alone. That's why I always try to get through to these guys that charge money. 2,000. What's that ticket you got, Tina? Tina was giving. I didn't want to talk about it, but here I am talking about it. You know, she was given a ticket that cost $2,000 to go to a Course in Miracles workshop. It's like, what the frick? Why would I interpose? You know, it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. If the salvation of my brothers is my own salvation, why would I not just open my heart and mind and just give it to them in the streets, on the street corners, on the hillsides, shout it from the rooftops?
Right on. Right on.
You know? Oh, well, you can't come in if you don't have $2,000. Sorry.
Oh,
We've only got 50 seats here, and you know, looks like it doesn't have your name on it this time around. Sorry. Ba-bow.
hey, Dave.
Are you going to go to that thing? You should go.
You told me to go. I mean,
Oh,
I was like, am I
absolutely.
going to do it? Am I going to do it? Am I going to do it? I didn't want to go. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And then when I brought it up to you, and you were like, that before you even knew about the cost, you were like, da 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 da. And I was like, oh shit, am I getting a yes to this? I was really trying to get a no. I was really trying to get a no. And then it was just too much. It was too much. It was like, and then you said that I don't know what anything is for. And I don't know what it's for.
Right, exactly.
Including you know,
that.
like, yeah, like it made, because I was like, it's money and I don't want to, and da 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 da. And then when someone offered it to me, it was like, oh,
look at all
shit,
that
really?
resistance coming up.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was
Resist, not
on
evil.
top of, it was on top of the woke stuff with you, and it was like, it was all coming up like at the same, it was all in 1 week.
Noodle's
The
my
woke
woke
stuff,
manager.
huh? Yeah,
Noodle's
no,
my,
I
she's going to
almost
manage.
messaged you.
She's going to find me a pronoun for what I am, because I don't fit in the world, and I don't fit in anywhere. So
Call you Christ. But Artina has a message. I mean, a question.
where are we looking? Oh,
There
there
she
she is. Hey,
Hi.
You still got
Hey.
it?
Well, I do, and I think you addressed it. So,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
you always want to start with, so my ego has a question, right?
right. No, it's good. It's my question. Ready? Watch me
Well,
flip this one.
and I think part of it is, you know, similar kind of going through the process. The first 50 lessons have been kind of like, what I see is what I don't like. The world is not real, and it's all kind of living in a hell. And what I've and I stop every time I see these messages, and even what you had just talked about, and I just pause, come to like center, and I look about and I'm like, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Right.
And I keep like, and so I'm trying to go through the process because I don't have to understand it, and I have to surrender to the other side of beauty, right? So if I'm in a polarity either way, what I'm seeing is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in every
Right.
day, and everyone I meet is of the utmost love every day. There is an opposite side to that. And so I'm just wondering if the course is to get us to walk the middle path.
Right. Pretty much.
Okay. Because what I got from, so I do automatic writing, and what I got from I've never had a conversation with Jesus, and what he said was, instead of looking out there, look inside. And he said, if you had to wear a badge that showed how much love you've given to yourself, what would yours say? And I just started crying, because my own self-love, because what I'm seeing outside of me is supposed to be a reflection of the inside, but what I've done is put up a wall and created an external world that's gorgeous, and my inside is like collapsing. And so I just wondered, right, like, is that right? Yeah. Okay. Well,
Good.
and I think that's part of the, I just got past the review, so I'm on 61, right, where I'm the light of the world, lesson
Yeah.
61. And all of a sudden it's like, and Jesus says that, I'm supposed to look at how much love I give myself. And I see all this beauty around, like he's just sitting there waiting for me to love myself in order to move forward. And
No,
so
he's not. You are.
yeah, the lessons don't resonate quite. I see everything
Right.
almost backwards. Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay.
let me tell you a thing. All right.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
automatic writing, hearing messages in meditation and everything like that, it's always going to be corrupted. Okay. Because it's coming through into a place, into consciousness, which is the domain of corruption. All consciousness is the domain of ego. I've had some really clear messages from Jesus, and even some from my teacher Ted since he's left the building, so to speak. Those guys always keep it really simple. It's 2 or 3 words, right? Anything more than that, and I start to fiddle with it in my head. What did I just hear? What did I see? What was that vision? And I realized, Chinese whispers, that game where you whisper something to someone and they do the next and the next and the next and the next.
Yeah.
And the person at the end, it comes out nothing like what the original thing was. It's like, that's why I don't trust myself. Okay.
Good
I
point.
know that whatever occurs here, I'm not going to trust myself with that. Right. I'm just going to allow that the Holy Spirit will use me and it'll be perfect, whatever it is. And if there's a correction to be made, it'll be made divinely and miraculously. Right. When I'm doing automatic writing, I don't do automatic writing. I never really have. I used to keep a journal, and and this is just prior to illumination, I used to write down things that I thought were prolific, like really profound, and it'd be like, whoa. But in the end, I didn't know what to do with it all. I didn't know how to integrate it. I had so many profound thoughts, and it was just like, it's just a book of blah, blah, right? So the idea that you would project out a beautiful world, that's a true one, right? For me, I did the opposite. I projected out a world in serious trouble, right? But the yin and the yang is the same. In the world, you're going to have a glass half empty or a glass half full kind of perspective on life. You'll be one person or the other, but it's still the glass. You don't want the glass full or empty, right? You want to be out of that whole frame of mind altogether. You don't want the yin or the yang, the good or the bad, the right or the wrong, the loved or the unloved in this world. You don't want any of it. Right? I want an experience of what I am as love that makes sense of everything else. Otherwise, I'm still going to be looking out there in the world. I mean, I drive, like I started here in the Zoom meeting, I'd drive my car, coming up the mountain the other day. Wow, an incredible experience. It was beautiful. It was amazing. But I realize it's all false, right? I realize it's not true, but still, I went to the Apple store the other day because my phone ran out of storage, and I couldn't figure out how to free up more storage. So I went down to the Apple store. I had to wait for somebody to see me. There's like 1,000 people in there. It's crazy, this big thing. But whilst I was waiting, the woman said to me, would you like to try the new goggle things? They're $6,000, the virtual goggles that goes on your head. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I got nothing to do here. My phone doesn't work. I can't, I'm just sitting here. Yep, sure. So I just said yes. So she puts the goggles on me and she's talking to me in this ear, and I can see all this stuff, right? And it's sort of out there, all out in the world. And it's incredible. It's like, wow, amazing. And she goes, and now I want you to reach over and, can you just do it with finger movements and stuff, like there's cameras and it picks up your hand movements, like air movements, whatever. So I'm doing these things, and other screens are opening and I can push things back and bring things closer and watch things in a sort of a 3D sort of, and it seems very real, but then you take them off. Right? It wasn't ever real in the first place. It just seems very real. So we project out. I project a world that seemed very real in suffering. I remember in the 80s, and Andre, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, and maybe it's still in some part, but the famine in Africa, the biggest famine they'd ever had, right? It was horrific. I was a little boy. I was probably about 12, maybe a little older. I don't know. And I remember on our televisions every night there would be advertisement for world famine and hunger relief and everything like that. And there would be I think the statistic that really drove, and I couldn't eat the food on my plate because people were dying of starvation, like thousands every day, thousands of people with nothing to eat, nothing. As a little boy, I didn't know what to do about it. I knew that I couldn't take the food on my plate and somehow make it by magic go over there for somebody to eat something. It was impossible. What can you do? And then I remember that perspective opened up the rest of the world for me. It opened up greed, or the have and the have not, right? It opened up the inequality. It opened up all of this sort of stuff. And as a boy growing up to suddenly begin to realize what the hell's going on in this world, the beauty of the world began to fade very quickly. My childhood and my wonderful friends and everything began to pale in significance to the importance that was suddenly dawning on me of recognizing where I was and what was actually going on. As a collective, as a whole, I didn't want anyone to suffer. I didn't want anyone to be hungry. I didn't want anyone to be sick. That didn't make sense to me. If there was a God, why does this stuff happen? None of that made sense. And I didn't try to cover it up. I guess in a sense I did. I tried to get out of society towards the end. I tried to, I went and lived on a commune, made a teepee and whatever. I tried to escape because I realized I couldn't do anything about it. I wasn't like Nelson Mandela. I wasn't that one person that could change everything. I wasn't Gandhi. I wasn't any of those people that suddenly, boom, a whole thing. And I went and lived on a commune, and I guess I escaped it. I ran away, in essence, right? But I remember as a child thinking how good my childhood was, how wonderful life is. When I had a job working in the Whitsundays, which is a big tourist area up here, I worked up there for a little while as a gardener on one of the island resorts, and there's tropical blue seas and palm trees, and I'm pushing a lawnmower right along the edge of the ocean. I've got no wants. The resort's feeding me 3 times a day. I got a bed. I got everything. I just got a simple job. It couldn't have got more idyllic. I'm talking to people. Everyone's happy because they're on holidays. So I guess in that sense, I manufactured a wonderful world that I could escape. And I did. I went there to escape from the big city. I went there specifically to escape from the big city, which I couldn't stand because of what it represented in my own thinking. You know, the same with everything in the world. I tried to find my little comfort zone, my niche, my nook, where I felt okay about life rather than allow life to affect me totally. But eventually it did. Eventually it affected me totally. I couldn't stand it anymore. And I realized that, you know, it's like when I was living on that commune and I built my teepee, I thought, this is it. This is the farthest away I can get from mainstream life. No TVs, no electricity, no nothing. Subsistence, growing vegetables, food, chickens, you know, like everything. Living off the land. The dream, I guess, for me. And even that didn't work. In the end, it just became hard work, hard life, backbreaking, digging the earth all the time, adjusting to every kind of trick of nature when everything got blown away or we were flooded out and all this. It was just, there was no peace of mind for me in any of it. You know, I knew that I couldn't just go to bed and lay down and not have to get up the next day, go pick up a crowbar or a pitchfork or whatever and go collect the eggs, do the vegetables. Like it was just work out in the sun. You know, physical work. And I got over it very quickly. You know, it was one of the things, and I spiraled down into this deep depression, deep depression. Finally, to the dark night of my soul. I guess if I'd have had A Course in Miracles in those early days and been able to sort of process everything based on a reasonable universal perspective, I don't know that it would have made all of those experiences and things I went through better, but it probably would have relieved me from the anxiety and the tension around knowing that I couldn't fix it. You know, which is the same anxiety and tension that you have when you realize, you know, you're going to die. You know, your body's just a temporary device. Once you face it, once you accept it, once you die to the flesh to be reborn of the spirit, it doesn't bother you anymore. There's no tension. There's no anxiety. It's like, okay, I see what's happening here. Okay, I accept it. All good. What's it going to look like? I don't know. Hopefully it'll be painless. But it liberates the mind from the foundation of the belief in time and space. The one underlying foundation of everything in time and space is that all things die. Oceans, planets, stars, little tiny goldfish, everything. Once you face that idea in your own mind, you know, it's the third block. Jesus talks about it as the third obstacle to peace in A Course in Miracles. I would put it as the first one. But, you know, that's just me not trusting Jesus. I always like to go in boots and all. Let's just get this done. You know, if that's the big one, I'm in, you know. It's like when I play video games and you got to fight all the bosses till you get to the big boss. And it's like, just bring on the big boss. I know I can beat all these other ones. Just like, what's the point of that? Just give me the big one. Give me the tough one first. It's funny. So, yeah, that'll continue to transform, Tina. You'll change. Like you're going to regret ever meeting me. Right, like Tina. Right? I always tell people, you're going to hate me before you love me. You're going to hate me before you realize what love actually is. Because I've glossed the world with what I think love is, and it's not true. It's like this being a journey into fear. You're going to go through all sorts of things like that where you look at yourself and you see what you've been doing in your own mind and be like, oh my God, this whole time I've just been looking through rose-colored glasses. You know, my world's beautiful, but then if I go beyond the parameters of my world, then there's another world out there that I don't really want to see. And the yin and the yang. That's exactly what happened with Buddha. Right. So Gautama, the Buddha, he was kept in his family's enclosure, in his family's house, to be protected from the ills of the world. They didn't let him see suffering. They didn't let him see pain. They didn't let him see struggle and poverty, nothing. They didn't want him to grow up with that. They thought they were doing the right thing by protecting him from what the world was about. And one day somebody left the gate open and he saw an old man or an old woman or whatever struggling with a big load on their back walking past or something. I forget the story exactly. And he went out. He went out the gate and never came back. He wanted to know, what was that? What is this suffering? And that's kind of like a beautiful chapter in human evolution, you know, like the story of the Buddha, the story of the Buddha's revelation. So the Buddha set out to discover the cause of suffering. Okay. That was it. Not to transcend the world, not to anything, nothing like that, just to discover the cause of suffering. Buddha's revelation, when Buddha sat under the tree and reached enlightenment, what he got as a takeaway from that was the nature of suffering as being the karmic result of the cause and effect relationships that people have with life. You know, and he tried to set out a way to offer reason, to offer change to people by encouraging them to question reality, to question life, to look at their thought processes, to look at their, you know, the mockery that has become of Buddhism today is nothing at all like the original teachings of the Buddha. The fact that there are various schools of Buddhism should be should be a clue to that. But it's like that revelation, you know, it's like, what was that, 500 years before Jesus. And then Jesus came along and built on that and said, well, let's take it a step further. Let's look at death. And he taught that there is no death. It's like you can transcend or you can heal, you can transform the nature of suffering in your life, but it doesn't stop with the idea of just getting out of the idea of suffering. It's going to go one step further, and I'm going to prove it to you by atoning for death, by taking responsibility for that idea. Here, Thomas, put your hands here and put your fingers in the holes. Here I am. I mean, it's hard to fathom, it's hard to believe, it's hard to wrap your head around something that happened just over 2,000 years ago as if it's a factual thing. Is it just stories in a book? Which is why you have to have your own experience. You have to have your own experience. Until then, all the words, all the teachings are nothing. They only bring you to the realization that the experience is necessary. And when you're ready to have the experience, you will. But delay in time is tragic. When you see that it's just a 6-foot hole and a pine box at the end, what are you waiting for? No one else is coming along. That's it. You are the Christ. You are God. You are the Buddha. You are Krishna. You're all of it. In this lifetime or another. One of the failings that I found with Buddhism or modern Buddhism is that they estimate 12 to 14 lifetimes to reach enlightenment. How does that help me now? How does that help me now? Especially since in my next incarnation, I'm not going to have any memory of all the work I did in my last one. I'm just going to come out at some supposedly higher vibratory functioning avatar of my former self. But I'm still not going to know anything. You know? What if I pop up in a country like China where religion is basically outlawed, where spirituality is basically outlawed, where they're rewriting the Bible to make Jesus look like a criminal? You know, it's like make hay whilst the sun shines. You got to be about it. You got to be about it. And that's the only thing I could ever encourage anyone is to really dig deep, really look at it. It's not about, that was a good Zoom meeting. Let's wait for the next Zoom meeting. No, take the Zoom meeting on point. What am I doing in my own mind? What am I doing? And remember, the ego is suspicious, vicious, cunning, and baffling. It'll push that question out of your mind. Oh, it's lunchtime. Better go and make a sandwich. Forget all about that karma stuff or that forgiveness stuff. I mean, if it takes to go draw a circle in the desert and sit there, do it. Whatever it is that you're called to do, do it. I walked out on my house. I walked out on my job. I walked out on everything because I felt it so strongly inside me to do that. I gave up everything, burned all my photographs, burned my old life, burned all my clothes, had a big fire one night and thought, no, I'm walking out. I don't know what I'm doing. Like St. Francis, same thing, exactly the same. St. Francis started hearing the voice for God whilst he was away at war, and then he couldn't do it. He couldn't fight. He couldn't kill anyone. He came home. He fell into a terrible fever. And he realized he can't live that life. He can't live according to the expectations of his father, his mother, his village. He had to serve the Lord, whatever it looked like. And he took nothing. He walked out naked. No clothes, not a shirt on his back, nothing. Walked out naked. And he prospered. He did well. He served the Lord, and the Lord supported him in all of the ways that he chose to serve. People came and joined him. Eventually that gets corrupted because everything in the world, all your best efforts get corrupted here. But what an example. Walk into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. What an example. It's like these examples that we have, these extreme examples. They give you an indication of what it is that you have to go to in your own association. What depths, what ends. If you find yourself at this point going to another bookstore to buy another spiritual book, man, you may as well have just, it's literally whatever it takes. 2 in 10,000 will hear this. 2 in 10,000. When am I going to let myself be one of those 2? When? And that's where I hold myself accountable. It's like, shit. Jesus is real. This is a real teaching. This is a real thing happening to me right now. I'm involved in it. I'm sitting here in a meeting listening about it. I'm working out where I feel I fit in with it, the whole thing. Maybe I don't feel I fit in with it, whatever. But there's no mistakes. All you got to do is look at life open-eyed, with eyes wide open, and you'll see it in front of you. And that's kind of like the tough love. That's kind of the Tyna, that's where the gloss comes off, where your beautiful world, it crumbles. It's like all idols must fall. It crumbles and you find yourself back at square one again. I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm really here to do. I don't even know if I believe in all this Jesus shit, What if it's all a lie? Still doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You have to get off the fence. You got to make your decision. You got to make a choice. Because at the end of the day, you admit to yourself, I don't know. So what does it matter if I take a chance on love? What does it matter if I take a chance on myself? Let me live in faith. Let me stop trying to control my own narrative. Let me go with the flow. Let me just get out of my own damn way and enjoy my life. Because that's what'll happen. Not in the way you think, but that's what'll happen. You know how much joy there is in being service to the greater good, Tyna? You know how much like real, true joy, true happiness? It's unspeakable. You can't express it. You have to live it. All the other stuff, it's like, what about it? What are you going to tell me about all the other stuff that is more important. Give up the world and follow me. Give up the world and follow me. You have a path, each of you has a path that runs parallel to the worldly path that you began this experience of human life with. It runs parallel. It's right there. You can just look across and see it. Every time my peace of mind is disturbed, I've gone back my old path. Every time my peace of mind is disturbed, I'm defending myself against becoming more open to realizing the nature of God's will, to realizing the nature of love in my life. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to that workshop. I don't want to go to that book reading. I don't want to go, just say yes to everything. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. See what happens. See what happens. I mean, if somebody invites you to go to Ukraine, maybe you might say no, but, like, be smart about it. But it's like it's a bold experiment. Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo used to encourage his students to make huge experiments with faith. Huge experiments. To do whatever it is. He didn't want them just sitting at his feet. He wanted them out there. Take nothing with you and follow me. Like literally, take nothing with you. Bring one robe and follow me. You don't need money. See your whole life as a pilgrimage. See your whole life as an act of faith. Like, try and see yourself in that role. We all like the idea of a nest or a comfort zone or a safety zone or somewhere where we feel safe. But what is it really? When you look at it, actually, what is it? It's keeping me back from life. It's holding me back from actually having the experience that my soul is yearning for. Not my conscious mental self, but my soul, the truth of my being. I remember I met a girl years ago. She was a Polish girl, and on the bumper of her car, she had a sticker, and it said, "Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all." And that really hit me. I've been like creeping along in life. I realized that I've been creeping along in life from one safety net to the next safety net. I hadn't ever had a true daring adventure. I haven't put it all on the line. I hadn't risked everything. I hadn't put all my cards on the table and be prepared to lose everything. But there's no loss in God. And that's the step you're taking. It's that one step. There's no loss in God. You have a soul. You have a soul journey. You'll be supported. All you got to do is let go. And it's beautiful. It's not going to be how you think it's going to be, but it's beautiful. Jesus sent the disciples out, and he sent them to the towns around and other countries and places. He said, stay with whoever will have you. He didn't say save up some money so you got enough money for a motel and go and make a booking flight. And it's like, just get out. Just go do it. Don't worry about your safety. Don't worry about your supply. God is your supply and your safety and everything. Trust. Have faith. Do what it is that your heart is calling to you to do. Be honest about it. What do I feel? What do I feel my soul is crying out for me to do? Where do I feel like I'm being called to serve? How? What? Show me, Lord. Show me, show me, show me. I'm willing to say yes and then do something. Take the step. I have people writing to me asking me questions like, should I leave my husband? Should I leave my relationship? It's like, I can't answer those questions. if you have to ask the question, you already know the answer. You wouldn't ask the question if you didn't know already. You're just looking for a guarantee. There's no guarantees. There's no safety net. Follow your heart. Do what you got to do. Everything comes to an end here. Marriages end, jobs end, houses get repossessed, everything. Dreams start and dreams end. The one thing that doesn't end is your life, and that lived in God is an incredible and miraculous experience. You never know where it'll take you. Did I tell you about that show, Tina, the one Highway to Heaven, I think it was, with the guy that was in Little House on the Prairie? What was that
John
guy's
Boy?
name?
Richard.
No, not John.
Richard.
Not John Boy, the father.
I have no idea.
Michael Landon.
Michael Landon. So
Oh, he
Michael
was on
Landon.
that show? Oh, that's right.
Michael Landon was the star in this TV series called Highway to Heaven. I think it was called Highway to Heaven. And Paul Hogan, our actor in Australia, he did a movie version of it some years later. But Highway to Heaven, he was an angel, right? Or a fallen angel, I think. I think that's the story. Anyway, but he served God. He didn't ever know where he was going, what town he was going to be in next, who he was going to be under shelter and under their roof, nothing. He just went there knowing that he was a healer, that he was being guided. And he would walk into people's lives, into their homes, into their, just miraculously, people would show up. He'd meet someone at a petrol station or whatever. And then the next thing you know, boom. And he would be the catalyst for a whole reversal of everything that was going on in their lives to bring it back to a place of harmony and bring it back to a place of love and warmth. It was an incredible show. I remember being profoundly affected by it and wondering, why aren't people like this? Finger on my nose. Right. Just say yes, take the journey. All right. I'm out of here. Any questions? Oh, what?
Give us a light session. You have time?
Today? Light session?
Right now.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. All right. Okay. Let's do it. Oh, gosh. I just have to stand up and stretch my legs. I've been sitting here like
Thank you.
like the Buddha for a minute. Just,
oh, thank you, Father. Thank you, Father.
oh, jeez. Oh. Croaky old avatar. I know it's not really a comfort zone, but I miss my old couch in my old house.
Yeah, I've never seen you with so much on, so much clothing.
Oh, well, like I sort of have to wear clothes around here. We're at my house. I wander around naked, and I wouldn't see anyone for weeks on end, and just if I went to town, I'd obviously put clothes on, but
That sucks.
all right, close your eyes, everyone. Close your eyes. I'm not out here. I'm a voice in your head. Close your eyes. Relax. Take a few deep breaths. Tina, close your eyes.